Hi, my name is Tom Buttke. This is another episode of Heroes from Home, and this is where we interview veterans to get some of the things that they've done in the military, and basically, as far as I'm concerned, to honor the vets because they deserve to be honored every day. Today I'm interviewing Tim Kraus. Tim, welcome.
Thanks, Tom.
First of all, tell us a little bit about your family, Tim.
Well, we grew up in the Rosellville area. After my father played professional ball, and getting himself, after he was done, settled, took us to the Elkhorn-Janesville area. But when I was 12, we moved up to Rosellville, so we finished through my grade school, middle school, and high school in the Marshfield School District. My mother was a school teacher at Our Lady of Peace for a number of years. And again, my father played baseball, but then became a journeyman electrician, a highline lineman, and did that up here until we bought the bar. My grandfather had built a dance hall in Rosellville and bought two bars. One was called Faye's Bar, and across the street was Spindler's. He owned both of those until he sold it to his cousin, and it became Spindler's Bar. But when my grandmother died in '75, my dad wanted to keep it in the family, so that's what brought us up here. He bought it, and we ran the dance hall and bar for a number of years.
And I believe I was in the dance hall a few times. Just out of high school, I was umpiring softball.
There you go.
So I actually played baseball there when we had the Yellow River League. So.
Yep.
So were you the mayor of Rosellville?
No.
That's Seibert.
Well, yeah, and before that, Butchie Spindler.
Butchie Spindler, friend of mine, yes.
Yeah.
Okay. What branch of service were you in, Tim?
I served in the Air Force. My father, before me, went in the Air Force until he actually got Bill Proxmire to let him out, or get him out of the Air Force a year early so he could play professional baseball. But hearing the stories growing up about how he liked what he did in the Air Force. He was an actual aircraft radar person, and some of the guys he met, they became strong friends that we saw off and on while I was growing up. So it showed a bond that was there. And so when I went in the Air Force, that was the first thing that I looked forward to, and just kind of out of the ordinary. 7 of us are getting together in Detroit this next week, and we're going to the Packer game. So we get to see him break the slump in Detroit, and I get to rub it into a few of my Air Force buddies.
So how long were you in the service? You were in for a while.
Yeah, just under 10 years. Okay. I went in '84 and got out the 1st of January of '95.
Cool. You must have seen a lot of things. What did you do in the service?
Well, when I first went in, I was an electronics technician in the radar field, air traffic control radar. So I was at Keesler following basic from Lackland and San Antonio. I went to Keesler for a year. And then I was stationed in Grand Forks, North Dakota, where we had B-52s and KC-135 tankers. I was fortunate to be involved in, we were converting the base over to B-1 bombers at the time. That was the time that was coming out. So I was at Grand Forks for 3 years until the Pentagon called and needed some people up in Alaska. So I went to Alaska and served for a year at a remote location. When I got my year done there, I went up to K.I. Sawyer in the UP of Michigan, just south of Marquette. And I was there for 6 years. In my last duty up there, they converted me from radar into telecommunications, actually a telephony side, and then got into communications intel. And met a 1-star general who became our wing commander, and he asked me to be the NCOIC of the base closure office. So in '93, we hit the closure list up there, and it was our job for the next 2 years to convert the base to civilian reuse. So it was very fortunate. I got to meet a lot of good people and learn a lot of things about economic benefits of a base, and not only that, but the downfalls, because KI, it contributed to 15,000 jobs there while it was still open, not only on the base, but the surrounding serving area.
So you got in the service because you had relatives in the service, or what made you go in, Tim?
I did very well in high school, and I played a lot of sports. Through high school, I was followed by a couple scouts. After my senior year, I tore a bunch of ligaments in my right ankle, and I had some reconstructive surgery on it. And so after that, both the Brewers and the Royals gave me a look-see again in a tryout, and I had lost a little bit of speed. And so with that not being a reason to go to school, because at the time I had my focus wrong, I thought I'd go to college, play baseball, and then hopefully have an opportunity to play professional ball. When I ended up with the surgery, I came back here and I worked at Rolla Home in Shallows and even Orida on the weekends down in Plover. But my life just didn't seem like it was going in a direction that was either not real responsible, not really focused. Mm-hmm. And I talked to a friend of mine who had just got out of the Air Force, and he said you should really look at that, because not only will it train you for something to use on the outside as a profession, but it's going to help you get focused and put things together for your life, and it really did.
So speaking of Roselleville, the Marshalls lived out in that area at one time too. We all know Gary Varsho, and now his son's in the major leagues. So what's in the water over at Roselleville that gets all these athletes?
Well, the fact that Gary never drank early in his life, I don't know that I could say it was the beer. But, it's just the lifestyle. And in fact, growing up, we kids from age 12 to 17, if you wanted money to do things on the weekend, you went and baled hay and picked rock.
Right.
Well, when the crops were done, we spent our days at the ballpark. Mm-hmm. And it didn't matter if there was 6 of us and we had to pick our field, if we had 10 of us, we played ball until the sun came down. And in fact, a lot of times our moms were mad because we skipped supper. Yeah. So it kind of gave us a competitive edge. We also drove our bikes into town when we wanted to play during the day in the summer, and that's a 9-mile jaunt one way.
Yeah, it's so the work ethic was there, and the passion for sports, and there maybe wasn't a lot of extracurricular activities. So I mean, I can relate to what you're talking about as far as playing ball and stuff. So
exactly, and in fact, Dickie Austin played professional ball. My dad played professional ball. Gary played major league ball. And we all know about Richie Seubert, who was a good athlete all the way around. So, yeah, Roselleville is a lot to be proud of.
I know Richie's coaching his son in New Jersey now.
Yep.
And he's a horse now, too.
Oh, Hunter's going to be, he's very good.
So what were your fondest memories from the service? I know being in 10 years, you mentioned some of them, but is there anything else? I'm sure discipline, things like that. I mean, you learned a lot of stuff. But is there anything else that you can think fondest memories from being in the service?
Well, it's inherently teamwork, and you get to lean on the guy next to you because you really don't have a choice, and it forced us to have a bond that turned into a deep friendship as well. Mm-hmm. So we had tasks that we had to accomplish, and we did it together. And in fact, our families became close because every family that went from base A to base B was in the same situation. You went to the second base, you knew nobody. It was you, your wife, and your kids, but they were always there like a hidden welcome wagon, so to speak. Mm-hmm. We're there to help the new people coming on, and that was real good. I think I was fortunate enough to play baseball until they got rid of it in 1986. While I was at Grand Forks. So then I played slow pitch. I was chosen as the starting shortstop for the Strategic Air Command team 2 years in a row, and I was also chosen to represent the Armed Forces team, which is the top players from all 4 branches at the time. That was good. But when we had an elephant walk, which is when all your planes are dispatched at the same time, at K.I. Sawyer, our B-52s were the first ones into Iraq. Okay. And so when they took off, it's almost like a salute that you give to all the planes taking off, but it also shows an inherent pride. Sure. Because everybody, I don't care if you're a cook or if you're the pilot, everybody has
a team.
Exactly.
It's a team. So some of the worst things from the military, now you mentioned when they shut down a base, and is anything else? I mean, it sounds like a lot of positives, but is there anything that you didn't like?
Well, I enjoyed, I spoke about the year in Alaska. The assignment was good. It was challenging, but it also, made you step up to the plate. But having to be away from your family, I had a daughter and my wife for a year.
That's a common thing that I'm hearing,
Yes.
And people don't understand. It's a sacrifice that you and the ladies put in, but the family as well.
Exactly, and in fact, you really realize how much they deserve as far as the appreciation that goes into, and people talk about vets not getting thanked. I would say most of your vets aren't looking for a thanks. You know what I mean?
Right.
They do it, and the camaraderie is something they appreciate, and I know I always appreciate it when somebody says thank you. But that family behind the scenes, that's the foundation that you can, in fact, provide your career to the Air Force.
Well, and one of the things I'm trying to get across to people watching the program is what veterans have gone through. Not necessarily being in a war, but the sacrifices that they put in. A lot of veterans don't want to talk about some of the bad things, when they have casualties and things like that. But people need to know. And I like I said, I'm not a vet, but boy, I sure respect any veteran, and everybody should, And it bothers me, like on Veterans Day. I mean, you'll get a little bit there, but it should be every day,
Yeah, and in fact, one of the things, I don't want to say that I was lucky, but in the line of my training, I was maintaining and helping with the radar systems that supported the aircraft. I wasn't taking my sidearm or my rifle out to the front lines. And as I went up, I got into a battle staff position, so we were overseeing what our aircraft were doing in the war. I had friends that, matter of fact, a couple combat communicators that went over that I never saw again. And you don't realize it. You hear stories about our heroes from World War II and the thanklessness that the people in Vietnam got. But when you lose somebody that you sat next to or you fought with and you never see them again, that's tough. Yeah. That's tough. And those are our heroes that deserve the appreciation. Your recons and your Army first line artilleries and infantries, they do a lot of stuff that some of us never see.
And I don't want to, I want to say that there's more to it, like you said, the team. I mean, yeah, people sacrificed, and that's got to be terrible. But it's a team, and it's all together, It's like anything else, a sports team. I mean, you can't have just a couple doing their job. It's got to be everybody together.
Exactly.
So, any other memories about the service you want to talk about?
Yeah, the birth of my first child, that happened while I was in the service.
Was that Tim?
That was Madison, Jennifer. She's currently the middle school P.J. Jacobs principal over in Stevens Point. But before that, and I'll never forget this, we lived in Biloxi, Mississippi, and we were a block off the beach, and we had just a 3-bedroom apartment. And we were a block from the Gulf Coast Coliseum. Well, my wife at the time was 6 months pregnant, and not real comfortable. So we'd go for a walk over to the Coliseum, and one night we went for a walk, and Heart was playing, the rock group, Heart. And so we just stood outside and kind of listened by the security door, and a guy opened the door, and he said, "Can I help you?" And we just said, "Well, we were just listening to it." He goes, "You're an Air Force guy?" And I said, "Yep, come on in."
Thank you.
And he took me and my wife in, and we stood next to that's the kind of stuff that sticks with you.
Yes. Yep.
You know what I mean?
Yep. People that appreciate what you're doing.
Yeah. Yes.
I always ask this question. Do you recommend people going into service?
I recommend that people consider going in, especially for me it was because I feel like I had a lot of talent and can-do attitude, but I didn't know how to use it at the time. I was
Well, you were young.
Yeah, I was very mature or immature that way, and it I don't want to say forced, but it taught me how to focus and do things and hit different levels of attainment when you're trying to get something done.
And I think that's part of our problem now is discipline. You know, I mean, that teaches you definitely that. You got to have, they teach you that you're going to own up to what you're doing. You got to do certain things. And
yeah, and in fact, talking to some friends who still have interaction with active duty people, a lot of them are getting very unhappy because the political side is coming in.
Yeah.
And one year they've got all the resources they need to get something done, or basically to fix a plane, and 2 years later, those are gone.
Yeah.
And so now we've got a bunch of planes that cause the guys to become dejected because they can't work on them. So the political side needs to stay out of that, and all we should be doing is thinking about our defense and taking care of our people and taking care of our country, and it would get more people to think or take an incidence of ownership than as a military member.
Yeah.
I think that's part of the reason people aren't considering it.
Yeah, that's a good point. I'm going to open it up to you, Tim. Final comments? Anything you want to mention?
First of all, I want to thank you and the media department for putting this on. I think this type of a forum is very much needed in Marshfield. There are some very, very experienced and I would say guys that have a good record from the military living in Marshfield. We've got a Chief Master Sergeant as far as being Air Force minded living here that has a lot of background experience, and I'm eager to see you be able to sit down with him. But even some of these guys that served in Vietnam and haven't for years wanted to really talk about it. Right. I know my wife's grandfather was in the Battle of the Bulge, and he wasn't real big to talk about it until he got around another military. The honor flight.
Yes.
I went with my father, and I saw so many people that one guy actually met another guy who was in the same unit at the same time. They had never met there, but the stories just flew. You know what I mean? And you sat there, and I got tears in my eyes listening to these guys being able to talk about it. And the daughter of one of the guys said, "My dad's never spoke of this stuff before." So
it's got to be a weight off from their shoulders, you know.
It is.
We did the military wall. I was honored to get your dad on the military wall at the community center.
It looks great, Tom.
But you know, people opening up. Now, I actually started that because of Chuck Hennis, was a friend of mine, had coffee. He got shot up in Vietnam. He had so many injuries, but he was a guy that volunteered for everything.
Right.
And he didn't like to talk about it, but I do remember being a friend of his, asking him different things, and finally he said, "Tom, what bothers me is I remember the first kid in Vietnam I had to shoot." Right. You know, and that's sad. And he had some issues, but boy, you know, you talk about people like that maybe they had to do a lot of volunteerism to keep the demons away, some of that. But, you know, when people would say that to me, I said, but at least they're doing it.
Yeah.
They're helping somebody. And
we were told in NCO leadership school that war is the biggest push of maturation in a person. It makes kids become men really quick.
I would imagine so. Okay, anything else you?
No, thank you very much. I appreciate it, and I'm glad I could meet with you today.
And just, I want the people out in the public to just remember, like I always like to say, is don't just thank a vet on Veterans Day or some of the other holidays. Anytime you see somebody, if they've got a military hat on, please thank them because they deserve it. And I thank you, Tim.
Thanks, Tom. Appreciate it.